Johnny Sack doesn't wake up one morning and randomly decide he wants Carmine Lupertazzi Sr. gone. By the time he floats the idea to Tony Soprano, he's already been living inside a pressure cooker for years. And that pressure is coming from three places at once: money, status, and the basic reality that in their world, the crown only moves when somebody dies. Carmine is old school, careful, and slow. Johnny is ambitious, emotional under the suit, and tired of being treated like the number two who should be grateful. That gap matters because the underboss position sounds powerful, but it is also a trap. You do the work, you manage the relationships, you take the heat, you fix the problems, and at the end of the day, you still need permission. The more competent you are, the more you notice how pointless it is that you still have to ask. The money side is the easiest to understand, and it is the part Johnny can talk about without sounding like he is confessing to envy. The New York and New Jersey crews are tied together through construction and other shared revenue streams, and those streams are not just extra cash, they are stability. These guys can still make money in a lot of dirty ways, but the big projects are different. They are predictable, they come with a rhythm. Everybody gets paid on schedule, which means everybody stays calmer. When a big project gets disrupted, it is not just a temporary inconvenience. It shakes the whole ecosystem. Guys start complaining. Guys start looking sideways. Guys start thinking about whether the boss is still the boss if he cannot keep the machine running. In Whitecaps, the show makes it clear that the Esplanade money is a major point of tension and that Johnny is worried about losing revenue from it. But if this was only about money, Johnny would have handled it like money. He would have haggled, sulked, and then taken his cut and moved on. The reason it escalates is because money is also respect in that world. Your percentage is your rank turned into a number. A boss who makes you eat a bad deal is not just taking cash from you. He is reminding you that the final word is his. The final word his term means. Carmine's whole style is built around that reminder. He listens, he smiles, he acts like he is above the noise, and then he does what he was going to do anyway. That kind of leadership works when everyone believes the boss is inevitable. But it creates rage in a guy like Johnny because Johnny does not just want to be rich. He wants to be seen as the future. And here is the part that people miss if they only watch Johnny as the classy guy in nice suits. Johnny has pride in the same way Tony has pride. It is not gentle pride. It is volatile pride. Earlier in season 4, when Johnny is humiliated and starts going off script, Carmine's response is not sympathy, it is control, to the point where Carmine is willing to let Tony consider moving against Johnny to keep the hierarchy intact. The show lays that out plainly in The Wait, where the conflict gets so hot that plans are being made for hits in both directions before it cools down. That episode matters here because it shows Johnny a terrifying truth even after all his years of service. Carmine is capable of treating him like a problem to be removed. Johnny files that away. Once you realize your boss can imagine the world without you, you start imagining the world without him. So by the time Whitecaps happens, Johnny is already primed for the thought, if it's him or me, why should I assume it's me? The Esplanade dispute is the spark, but the gasoline was poured long before. Johnny's anger is not just that Carmine is blocking him, it is that Carmine is blocking him while acting like it is nothing. Carmine makes it feel like Johnny's needs are just noise, and to a man built on reputation, being treated like noise is almost worse than being treated like an enemy. There is also the succession issue hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Carmine is old enough that everybody is thinking about what comes next, even if nobody says it out loud in the room. Johnny has done the grind. He has managed the relationships, the sit-downs, the diplomacy, the dirty work. In a normal ladder, that should mean he is next. But Carmine has a son, and even the possibility that Carmine could prefer his own blood is a knife in Johnny's back. Whether Carmine truly planned to hand it to little Carmine or not, the fear alone is enough. Johnny cannot tolerate the idea that he has spent decades being the loyal right hand, only to be told at the end, thanks, but we're going with the family name. That is the kind of insult men get killed over in this world because it tells everyone you were never real royalty, just hired help. Now look at why Johnny goes to Tony with it. On paper, it sounds insane. Why would you outsource the biggest decision of your life to a guy from New Jersey? A guy who is independent enough to say no and smart enough to realize he could be walking into a trap. The answer is that Johnny needs what Tony represents, distance and deniability. If Carmine gets taken out by someone inside New York, every single person with a brain is going to start looking at Johnny first. He is the underboss. He is the person who benefits most immediately. Even if he did not order it, he would get blamed. If he did order it, he would start his reign with a civil war. So the only clean way is to make it look external, like business from outside the family circle. That is exactly why Tony tells Christopher to make it look like an outside job, and why the hit is being arranged through people who are not directly traceable to Tony's own inner world. Johnny also picks Tony because Tony is both capable and compromised. Tony has done business with New York for years. Tony has proven he can keep things quiet. And Tony is the kind of guy who might do it if the deal is good enough, because Tony also understands that the boss seat is always about leverage. Johnny is basically offering Tony a moment of influence over New York's top chair, and that is powerful bait. Plus, if Tony agrees to kill Carmine, Johnny has dirt on Tony forever. That matters. People think leverage is just money, but in their world, shared sins are the strongest contract. Once you cross a certain line together, neither of you can ever fully turn on the other without burning yourself too. But Tony is not only tempted, he is also cautious, and that is where Johnny misreads him. Tony's caution is not moral caution. It is survival caution. Tony's biggest fear is starting a war he cannot control. A hit on Carmine is not like a hit on a captain. It is not even like a hit on an underboss. It is cutting the head off a massive organization with 100 people ready to rush into the vacuum. The risk is chaos. The risk is retaliation. The risk is that whoever wins after will not be Johnny, and then Tony has made a permanent enemy for nothing. That is why the one time Johnny asked him is so revealing. In Whitecaps, Tony initially declines to move against Carmine, then Johnny offers concessions, and Tony relents. That sequence tells you everything. Johnny is not asking as a friend. He is negotiating. He is buying Tony's participation. And Tony is not agreeing because he loves Johnny. He is agreeing because the deal is shifting enough that it feels like the risk might be worth it. It is business logic, not loyalty. Then Carmine does something that ruins Johnny's whole plan in the most humiliating way possible. Carmine reverses himself and offers to negotiate, agreeing to accept a smaller percentage and praising little Carmine for helping bring it together. That last detail is crucial. Even if Johnny can swallow the money part, Carmine praising little Carmine right in the middle of the conflict is basically Carmine reminding everyone, my blood is here, my legacy is safe. To Johnny, it is Carmine twisting the knife. Carmine is undermining Johnny's authority while also elevating the son. It is like Carmine is saying, look, I can solve this without you. At that moment, Johnny still wants the hit to happen. The show even notes that Johnny still intends to go through with it. And that might sound irrational if you think this is purely about the Esplanade split. But if you understand it as Johnny finally deciding he cannot live under Carmine anymore, it makes perfect sense. Carmine backing down does not fix the deeper problem. It actually makes it worse for Johnny, because it proves Carmine can switch gears and still remain the boss, while Johnny looks like the guy who could not get his way until the old man decided to be generous. Tony, though, pulls out. He cancels the hit and cleans up the loose ends so it does not come back to him. From Tony's perspective, this is smart. He got what he wanted. The dispute is settled. The money continues. The chance of a war drops. He lives to fight another day. From Johnny's perspective, this is betrayal at a level that is hard to describe. It is not just that Tony refused to do the job, it is that Tony agreed, got Johnny to commit emotionally and strategically, and then backed away after Johnny had already crossed a psychological point of no return. Think about what Johnny has risked by even asking. In his world, just floating a plan like that is dangerous. If word ever leaks that Johnny wanted Carmine dead, it could destroy him. It does not matter if he did it or not. The intent alone is enough to mark him. So when Tony backs out, Johnny feels left in the open. That is why, later on, when Johnny and Tony are talking again, Johnny brings up that arrangement from the year before and how Tony left him in a lurch. It is not just complaining. It is Johnny saying, you made me expose my neck, and then you walked away while my neck was still exposed. This is also why Johnny does not just do it himself after Tony cancels. People ask that a lot, like it is a plot hole, but it actually reinforces the logic of the situation. Johnny cannot do it himself without becoming the obvious suspect and triggering internal blowback. If Carmine dies in a way that points anywhere near New York, Johnny becomes the first name on every list. If he does it openly, it is war. If he does it quietly, it still smells like him. Outsourcing it to Tony was the point. When Tony backs out, Johnny loses the only method that could have gotten him the throne without spilling internal blood immediately. And underneath all of this is Johnny's personality. Johnny is a guy who believes in symbols. He likes tradition. He likes titles. He likes being treated like a statesman. But he also has a temper that can make him reckless, and he has a deep need to be taken seriously. In Season 4, you see how quickly personal emotion can become political crisis for him. That same wiring is active in the Carmine plot. Once Johnny decides Carmine has to go, it stops being a flexible business strategy and becomes a statement about who Johnny is. Backing down would mean admitting that Carmine can push him around forever. Johnny would rather risk everything than accept that. Carmine, on the other hand, is the opposite type of gangster. Carmine is not trying to prove something. Carmine is trying to keep the machine stable and keep himself alive. He is willing to look cheap, slow, even boring, as long as the cash flows and the hierarchy stays clear. That is why Carmine can sometimes sound almost dismissive when Johnny is fired up. Carmine thinks in systems. Johnny thinks in slights. Carmine thinks, how do we keep the family earning? Johnny thinks, how do I stop being treated like a subordinate? When those two mindsets collide, it is not just a disagreement. It is a succession crisis waiting for a trigger. So when you ask why Johnny wanted Carmine broke, why he wanted him gone, you are really asking why Johnny could not tolerate being second place anymore. The Esplanade situation gave him a rational excuse, but the emotions underneath it were not rational. They were rooted in years of being the guy who negotiates and compromises while Carmine takes credit for stability. Years of watching Carmine control the room with calm indifference. Years of suspecting that the chair he has been working toward might get handed to someone else, not because of talent, but because of blood. And when Johnny asks Tony to do it, that is Johnny reaching for the one move that could flip the board without starting a direct New York Civil War. Outsource the murder. Make it look external. Keep your hands clean. Rise into the vacuum. He's trying to win the throne the way a politician wins office, not the way a street guy wins a corner. But The Sopranos is brutal about one thing. You cannot play political chess with men who are always doing survival math. Tony only agrees when it benefits Tony, and Tony cancels the second his risk goes up and his reward goes down. In that moment, Johnny learns that Tony is not his soldier. Tony is his own boss. And Johnny, who built his whole plan on using Tony as a tool, is forced to sit with the worst kind of defeat, the kind where you cannot even admit what you were trying to do. That is why Johnny's attempt to take Carmine out is not just a plot point, it is a character reveal. It shows you Johnny's ceiling under Carmine. It shows you how badly he wants to be the man at the top. It shows you how he mixes pride and business until he cannot separate them. And it shows you the real rule of that world, the one nobody writes down, the one that gets people killed. If you are going to reach for the crown, you better be ready to finish it, because the second you hesitate, everyone can smell it. Johnny reached, tried to use Tony to close the deal, and Tony pulled the plug. Carmine survived that moment, not because he was stronger in the street, but because he was steadier, and because the people around him, even the ones who hated him, understood that killing a boss is never just one murder. It is the start of a new era, and most of the time, it is a worse era.